Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at the Marvel Legends Spider-Man Homecoming 2-pack, which includes Spider-Man and the Sentry Iron Man, or just regular Iron Man if you keep the right helmet on. Both of these figures are essentially repaints. They do have a couple of unique parts, but that's about it. So there's a little bit to talk about despite them being basically old figures. So let's go ahead and get them off the stand and take a closer look. So we're going to do this review all at once. We're not going to do two separate reviews. I'm going to save you guys a little bit of time with this because they're mostly old figures, or at least reused figures. So I'm going to do them separately. So we're going to go ahead and talk about Spider-Man first. We're going to set Iron Man aside. Now, Spider-Man stands just about 6 inches, which is pretty good for Marvel Legends scale. It's not true 1/12 scale, but it'll do for the rest of the Legends. And that's just over 15 centimeters, so that's pretty good. And this guy is essentially the exact same figure as the Web Wings Spider-Man, except he has two different heads. So as far as accessories go, we have the Tom Holland head, which is actually pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's definitely good enough. And they did that kind of dot matrix tampography paint job on there, which actually looks really nice. And then we do have a Spider-Man head where he's supposed to be winking, I guess, but they didn't paint the one eye properly at all, and it just looks really not good. Luckily, the heads from the other Spider-Man, the other Web-Wing Spider-Man, are interchangeable. We do also have the Web Wings. These are slightly darker than the other Web Wings from the other figure, and they seem to peg in a little bit better, but they're still pretty much worthless and garbagey, so that kind of sucks. Now, as far as the figure goes, it's almost the exact same. However, it is a different paint job, which I guess does add some value in addition to the Tom Holland head. As you can see, the colors are a lot different. The blue is lighter, and the red has a little bit more blue in it, a little bit less yellow. So it really depends on what color scheme you like, and of course that will be a problem when interchanging the heads. So they do fit, but this red has a lot more yellow in it than this one, so it's going to change how it looks. Otherwise, the paint job is pretty much identical in terms of the gray wash for the webbing. If you get a good one, then good. If you get a bad one, you're going to have gray pooling. The black paint job is just about equally clean, and then all of the line work on the blue is pretty much the same. So it's really just a matter of the shade of blue and the shade of red that you're looking at. So I'm going to run through the articulation really quickly just in case you guys didn't see the other video. If you haven't, you can click right there, and then you'll be able to see that review for the original Web Wings Spider-Man in the single carded package. So the head does have a hinge and a ball peg. It doesn't give you a ton of range, but it's probably enough. It's okay, I think. Can't really look up with the Tom Holland head, but I guess that's alright. You can rotate. Doesn't really give you too much play side to side. I want to note that it does look like his head is too big, but I think it's just an optical illusion because if you compare it with the Spider-Man head, if you get rid of the hair and push in his ears, it's pretty much the right size. So I think it's just because it's a lighter color, it stands out a little bit more. As for the shoulders, they're still kind of too low and kind of not right, but once you pose him, that's pretty hard to notice. So it does look weird in a neutral pose, but once you do get him into something a little more dynamic, it'll be okay. And we do have that good range from that butterfly joint. It's done pretty well. It looks nice. Doesn't give you the best range, but it does look really good how they did it, so that's nice. We have the ball hinge shoulder, which works really nicely. Full rotation, full hinge, bicep swivel, double jointed elbow. You know, pretty much standard articulation, but it's executed really nicely on this guy. Wrist swivel and hinge. We do only get a fist hand and a web slinging hand. No interchangeable hands on this guy. Ab crunch goes back pretty far. Doesn't look the best, but it's probably good enough. And then it also goes forward really far, and it also looks okay. It's still kind of weird the way the sculpt is on the back. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it looks like they kind of just chiseled it away. It looks kind of weird. Waist twist is obviously fine. Hips don't go out very far. It's pretty limited. Not even much better than 45, so that's a little weird. They do go forward pretty nicely, so you'll be able to work some posing out. Just don't expect it to be too crazy. Thigh swivels are fine. No problems there. Double jointed knees work just fine. Full 180 pretty much. No shin swivel. Ankles do go pretty far forward, better than most figures, so that's pretty good. And then they go all the way back, like all the way back, so that's really good. And you get an ankle rocker, but it is at an angle, and since there's no shin swivel, it's going to be a little tricky to pose him. So ultimately, it's really just the same figure with a slightly different color and new heads. So it's really up to you if you need to get it or not. Honestly, this pack is not necessary. It's really just a couple of repaints that have some accessories. So let's move on to Iron Man. So this guy stands just about 17.5 centimeters, just shy of that, like 17.25, which makes him about 6 3/4 inches, just above that, which does put him pretty well in scale with the other Marvel Legends, slightly above 1/12 scale. So this guy is just a repaint of the Mark 46, which also already got a repaint, which was the battle damage version, which came in that 3-pack with Spider-Man and Cap from Civil War. And honestly, this is probably the best looking one, but it still suffers from all of the same issues. Luckily on this guy, the paint job is really nice. He's molded in this metallic gray, silvery color, and then the red and gold are pretty much painted everywhere except for, I think, the legs and forearms. And maybe the feet and hands, I'm not sure. Hands are gray. Anyway, they did a really good job. The only issue I have is this forearm seems to be a little bit darker than the rest, but the chest and everything else is painted really nicely. It's nice and clean, and it looks really good. I mean, we even have some detail painting in the neck back there, so I really don't have a problem with the paint job on this guy. It does look nice. The arc reactor in the chest is done well enough. The eyes are done pretty well, so I'm pleased with it. He did not get a paint job for his hand repulsor, but it's in a fist, so it's not the biggest deal. Now, as far as accessories for him, we only have 2 this time. We have 1 repulsor blast, which works for his left hand, and it's actually done pretty well. It's fine. We've seen this before, though. And then we have 1 open head, since this is the Sentry armor. He wasn't in it every time in the movie, so we have 1 opened head, which it actually looks pretty good everywhere except for once you look inside, there's kind of like a big red peg in there that holds the faceplate on, so that's not great, but you do have that to work with. I don't have my other Iron Man here, so I can't tell you if that head will fit on the other body or not. It should, since it's the same figure, but I don't know about the coloring. Alright, so let's run the articulation real quick since we have seen this before. It's nothing new. If you want to see the other review, you can click right there. That's from the, I'll show you the battle damage one because it looked a little bit better than the regular one. Anyway, the head is on a ball peg and a hinge, so it can look up pretty far, and it looks down all the way. Full rotation, no problems there. And then it even does have a little bit of rock to it, so that's pretty good. Shoulder pads are connected to the shoulders, which is good in terms of rotation, but it is very limited going out to the side. Very, very limited. Bicep swivel works just fine. Double jointed elbow works pretty well, a little bit better than 90. And then the wrists have a swivel, and you can actually tuck it in to do a repulsor blast. So that is pretty good. So we have the repulsor blast there, fist hand there. Diaphragm joint does lean back pretty far, creates a little bit of a gap, but it's not too bad. And it leans forward a little bit, not a whole lot. Side to side does work pretty nicely, surprisingly. Full rotation. And that's it for the torso. For the hips, they're standard Marvel Legends style hips, but they don't really go out to the side unless you really force them, and then you're risking breakage. So I can't advise you do that. Going forward, also very, very minimal. Very hard to pose this guy. The thigh swivels work just fine. The knees work just fine, so those are good things. And then for the ankle, you get a little bit going forward. That's actually pretty good, so I like that. And then going back is just fine. And you get an ankle rocker, but it's at a really steep angle, so it's going to be pretty limiting. So ultimately, really hard to pose this guy, but he does look pretty cool. It's probably the best look for this mold. He still has kind of like gorilla arms, but it's not too bad. I think that's mostly just an optical illusion. And I mean, I do like it. It's probably the best iteration of this figure, but it's still just a pretty mediocre figure. And that's kind of true for this guy. It is a solid Spider-Man figure, but the web wings are definitely a failed attempt at added value. So I don't know if you actually need it unless you really want the Tom Holland head. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you come back for that. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And in the meantime, keep collecting.